Chapter 11, in which the Pratchetts are at the Refuge, a workhouse with the town's children. The carriage stops at the wrought iron gates of the Refuge in an empty street. Imagine what the Pratchetts would think when they see it. It was a dark, depressing building constructed with bricks that were weathered out from years of exposure and scarce maintenance until it looked colorless. The inscription above the gates read in white letters, Arbeit macht frei. "If Bavaria calls it a refuge, I call it a prison," Grandpa Jack said. Two guards come to the carriage and open the door, dragging the Pratchetts out, starting with Audrey, then Todd. "You let her go!" Grandpa Jack shouted. A guard yanks him out. Another backhands him in the face and draws out his Mauser, aiming it at him. "I suggest you start behaving, scum, unless you want a bullet between your eyes," he threatened. "Grandpa," Audrey wailed. "I'm warning you three," the guard said. "Once you step inside, you better pray that you last a week." The driver laughs and cracks his whip, and the carriage storms away. The guards of the Refuge drag the Pratchetts inside the building, shouting orders with vitriol. The workhouse, as people will recall, had a dining hall for eating, dormitory for sleeping, a kitchen, schoolrooms, nurseries, an isolation ward for the sick, a sewing room for making clothes, vegetable gardens, and a courtyard with a small farm. But wait until you heard of the people who run such a place. Make sure you know them very well. They were taken inside before the master and the matron who run the place. The master was old, probably about as old as Grandpa Jack. His face was wrinkled and his hair white and balding, but his eyes were full of irate, hoping for the opportunity to beat troublemakers into submission with the hard hickory cane he's holding in his hand. The matron was stout and tall and bony, and she wore steel-rimmed spectacles that fixed onto the end of her nose with a clip. She was known for having a voice which sounds as metallic as a squealing door whenever she got angry or excited. They're about as cruel as any other god in Bavaria. The master blows his shrill whistle, ordering the guards. When they were summoned, he ordered, "Take them up to the dormitory." The guards immediately obey. The dormitory was a dark, smoky room packed tight with children. Oh yes, there were children in Bavaria, all right. But they were all miserable, some crying, others with disabilities. They were scrubbing the room from top to bottom. They were all poor and dirty, all helpless and overworked. Most of them, from oldest to youngest, cower in fear as the door is swung open, and in came the guards, with Mausers drawn at the Pratchetts. Then the master and the matron arrived. "You all line up!" the master barked, striking the end of his cane hard on the floor. It made a loud thud that echoes the entire room. They immediately line up, including the Pratchetts who joined them. "To the newcomers, you'll only speak when you are spoken to," the matron said. "There are consequences for those who don't abide by the rules." "What kind of rules?" Grandpa Jack asked. The master stepped forward and said, "It's the consequences you should be aware of. For lying, the consequence is either confinement in the box or a whipping. For talking back, the consequence is either the box or solitary. For breaking something, the consequence is confinement in the box. For not working, the consequence is either confinement in the box or a whipping." He leans forward until his face is inches from Grandpa Jack's. "For not working faster, the consequence is solitary with no food or water for 3 whole days. No warnings, no second chances. I hope you learn them all well." Yes, sir, Grandpa Jack whimpered. Now get to work, the matron ordered. I want this room to shine like the white bricks of Castle Bratwurst by 1 p.m. or face very serious consequences. They leave the room and slam the door, locking it. Grandpa Jack, terrified for the mentions of misdemeanors and the resulting punishments, can only say, I don't think we're going to last so long. Then the tears came. We have to try, Grandpa, Todd said as he grabs a scrub brush. With all these hopeless children, I wish Kitty shows up and sees this. All this cruelty. I would wish the same thing as well. I mean, that matron was as worse as your neighbor. You better work like the rest of us, a little girl in rags whimpered while she sweeps. And you better not say that to her. We don't want to get beaten again. I will not allow that, Grandpa Jack said. Do they even feed you? They feed us, but every day the food was tasteless, a grimy boy said. I don't think it's right, Grandpa Jack said. We shouldn't be talking to each other, a little girl said. We're not kidding. It'll be a bad whipping if we get caught. Some children began coughing violently, their eyes itching. Grandpa Jack watches the children slave away, especially his children. He even heard Audrey begin to cry. 1 moment later, Todd saw a rat emerging from a crack. Some quest this turns out to be, he groaned, remembering what the conductress said when she mentioned Bombaria in song. I want to go home, Audrey whimpered. I miss my mommy. Don't cry, my little girl, Grandpa Jack said. I don't want to see you cry. Then he paused. On one of the barred windows was an envelope with a red heart sealing it. He walked over and picked it up. Grandpa, what is it from? Todd asked when he saw him holding the envelope. It's from Kitty, Grandpa Jack said. That's good. I knew she wouldn't abandon us. Grandpa Jack opens the envelope and finds 2 letters. He pulls out the first one. If I recall, your father told me I have slightly poor eyesight. More's the pity, Todd said while scrubbing the floor. Read it, but read it quietly or we'll get in trouble. Grandpa Jack cleared his throat and began. To the Pratchetts, Todd, Audrey, and Jack. I hope you 3 forgive me for abandoning you while the leader of the soldiers take you to this workhouse.
It's just that I don't want them to see me because no one in Bombaria ever wanted to believe in absolutely everything. By tonight, I'll be at where you were imprisoned. I hope I didn't cause enough grief while you're in there. I love you all. Sincerely yours in haste,
Princess Kitty of KAWAII Wonderland. This was followed by another letter in the envelope.
Every cat shall have her day. All hope must never be a loss. For every life that is dull and gray, a calming river is where they must cross. From the heavens a star shall descend, a time shall come to intervene. A princess is who you shall depend, for she must be believed to be seen.
I was right about her when she cannot be seen in Bombaria, Todd said. Doesn't matter anyway, another girl said, sobbing. Nobody's going to come here. Grandpa Jack folded the note and put it in his pajama pocket. Todd, for now, we'll wait until dark, he whispered. No matter how the severity of the situation turns out. So the Pratchetts wait for night to come, but they cannot help but to sympathize with the poor children in the refuge. If Princess Kitty had only known the dreadful things that both the master and the matron should ever do to them. And so, the minutes evolve into hours as the Pratchetts remain in the refuge. Throughout the day, after lunch with the children, the Pratchetts clean the stairs, polish the banisters, and tossing dirty water out the windows, hoping to not land on someone who can be out there. Inside the sewing room, they swept up stray pieces of fabric, whilst others sewed at the sewing machines. At 5 p.m. before dinner, Todd and Audrey found themselves in the kitchen helping with dishes, while Grandpa Jack had been tasked with peeling onions and potatoes in the pantry. The onions were causing him to cry and wipe his eyes furiously. "Perhaps it would be nice if I never leave home again," he groaned. "I should have stayed home." But something horrible happened when one of the girls accidentally dropped a plate and shattered onto the tile floor. It was a 6-year-old girl with brown pigtails. Her eyes filled with dread. She desperately tries to hide the broken plate. Startlingly, the master is already in the room. "What did you do now?" he screamed. "Did you make a mess? I hate messes!" She backs into a corner, fearing what will come. "It was an accident," she whimpered. "Don't you lie to me! Remember what I said about liars?" "I didn't lie." "Liars deserve to be punished with the box!" Then he pulls out his whistle and blows it. 2 Bonvarian guards bring in a large antique trunk and opens the lid. "No! No! Not the box!" The girl screamed and tries to get away, but the master grabbed her by the pigtails and threw her across the floor. Todd and Audrey turned, unable to watch any longer. Audrey tried not to cry. "Get in there!" the master screamed and hauls the poor girl into the box. He slams it shut and locked it. "Let me out!" The girl sobbed and screamed uncontrollably. "Let me out!" "I'll give you something to cry about, you worthless pile of filth! You'll be crying for the rest of the night with the rats!" He orders the guards. "Take her away and find some!" The box is hauled away. That poor little girl screamed and begged. "Let this be a lesson to all of you," the master growled. "For your disobedience, even the slightest misdemeanor, this is what awaits you. All of you work faster, or you will be next. Schnell! Schnell!" He storms out. The children try to fight back tears. Todd and Audrey were among them. Meanwhile, in the pantry, while Grandpa Jack is peeling the potatoes, the master bursts in. He was disgusted to find most of the potatoes unpeeled. "Work faster, or I'll beat you hard!" he roared. Grandpa Jack got up to his feet and demanded, "You really think I'd do that? After what you've done to that child?" "This does not concern you. But your children will be next if they disobey. Now work faster!" "Well, you can forget it. I will not let you harm my children or anyone. I may be as old as you, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to take a swing at you!" But the master blew his whistle. Immediately the guards were summoned. "Take him!" he ordered. The guards obey and drag Grandpa Jack out of the pantry. "Shut up!" he cried. "Let go of me! You're breaking my arm! I'm only 19 and a half! I have arthritis!" Todd and Audrey can see their grandfather being dragged by the guards. They immediately rush to them, begging to let him go. But the master is already in the kitchen. "Let him go!" Todd shouted. "Please let him go!" Audrey begged. "You two will keep working unless you want to go straight to the box with the rats!" the master shouted. They immediately back away. They can only watch as the guards drag Grandpa Jack out of the kitchen before they continue working. As soon as the master heads out, that's when Audrey breaks down crying. Prayed only for yours truly, Princess Kitty. Inside the dimly lit corridor of the refuge, Grandpa Jack gets dragged to a dark cell, kicking and screaming all the way. Following was the master and the matron, the latter holding a lantern. One guard opens the cell door, allowing the other guards to throw Grandpa Jack inside. Looking around, apart from a toilet and a sink, was a grimy bed, the only furniture in the room. The master came into the room and turned Grandpa Jack around, facing him. This is where you remain, old man, in solitary until tomorrow afternoon, the master said. Then you'll be sent to the elder ward. You'll never see your children again. I don't deserve to be here, Grandpa Jack said. Those are my 2 grandchildren you're talking about, Todd and Audrey. I cannot leave them. I don't care for them. They're no different from the others. Hopefully this'll give you enough time to learn to leave those 2 horrible excuses for children and to reflect. To all the children in here, there are no rewards for proper behavior. There is no kindness or love. There's only punishments. Punishments they've deserved. No child that lives under this roof will disobey or show defiance, even at the slightest misdemeanor. You have no right to treat them! Can't I? The master sneered and turned, but Grandpa Jack has his hands on him. I won't let you do this! He shouted. Not my children! The master shoved him off. I can already imagine them cowering if they had been bad. My hand on the whip and using it on them. They'll be crying and screaming for mercy and begging me to stop. Every time they do, I will just keep whipping them and whipping them until they happen to pass out. Just as Grandpa Jack goes after the master again, there was an explosion on his kneecap. He didn't see the master swing the hickory cane at his knee. Grandpa Jack screamed and slumped onto a sitting position, almost paralyzed, clasping the right leg with his hand. Inconceivable that one blow could cause such pain. Never, for any reason on this world, could you wish for an increase of pain. Of pain, you can only wish one thing, that it would stop. And the worst part is that there's nothing you can do to stop me from breaking them. Then the master suddenly bellowed, You keep your hands off of me! Otherwise your other leg will be next. You'll be spending the rest of your life until you rot. Do you understand me? Grandpa Jack was visibly defeated by lowering his head. That's what I thought, the master grinned, satisfied. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. He slams the metal gate, locking it with a key before leaving. Grandpa Jack got up to his feet, but he can feel an intense pain on his right leg. He screamed, but managed to limp to the empty bed before he collapses onto it, crying. Not only cry, but crying for Princess Kitty. At night, while the children, including Todd and Audrey, had their supper of tasteless gruel, Grandpa Jack remained in solitary, now shivering from the cold, followed by a wish that the nightmare would all be ended soon. He would be waking up back with Grandma Eileen in the living room, and their grandchildren still asleep in their room. A hope that didn't happen. Inside the dark, while he lays his head on a pillow, he hears a faint voice that is speaking to him.
What action shall we do? What outcome shall we get? If anything works out in the end, there shall be no regret. What action shall we do? What outcome shall we get? Don't lose hope if you don't know. You'll think of something yet.
Struggling to get up towards the small basement window with narrow bars, there he can see Princess Kitty. He turns away. This is not a good time to come here now. Not a good time at all.
I told you that I'll be at where you're in prison, didn't I?
She asked.
You've read my message in Rouge, did you?
Can you imagine the trouble we went through today?
I know,
she said, her ears drooping.
I've been watching you and your grandchildren, but the 3 of you are unable to see me. I've seen what the Refuge Master did to the children, and I've heard their cry. Even the time when he hurled a little girl into a box for accidentally breaking a plate in the kitchen. I'm just hoping your grandchildren are safe. even though I happen to not see them with you.
But his mouth was gaping and his eyes widened, turning to see her. So you've been here with us the entire time, but we can't see you.
Even the children of the refuge can't see me because they hardly believe in anything unreal due to their hard labor,
Princess Kitty said. Grandpa Jack turns away, knowing that he is too numb to be angry at her. Some quest this turns out to be, he said. For hours, we know what Bavaria is. It's a nightmare. It's nothing but a nightmare. Now, thanks to the master, I'll never see my grandchildren again. Tomorrow I'll be sent to the elder ward. That is the fact.
Which I will not tolerate, Jack,
she stated. Then what are you going to do without getting in trouble yourself? In the refuge, I know one thing and one thing only. Nothing is fair here. The children won't survive in here. She can hear him sobbing. Not even my grandchildren. What's worse is that they'll be punished, even at the slightest infraction. Their mother and father will be worried and upset for sure. And if they do think they'll never see the children again, they'll be devastated. God knows that we don't deserve to be here, Kitty. I will give my life to make my grandchildren safe from this hell place, as well as the children who are imprisoned before us, if I could. But that's a privilege I'm not allowed.
Pity is what I hear from you. A pity that I refuse to tolerate also, she said. If you know what's best for you, you listen to me carefully. I'm only here tonight to put your mind at ease.
Why?
The conductress mentions that this town persuades us to figure out what is best. I guess we did figure out what is best, didn't we?
That's true, but
if Bavaria shall be overthrown, it may happen. Never fear, Jack. Good always triumphs. I'll see to that. But for now, we'll have to wait for the opportune moment, even though it may seem hard for you and your grandchildren. I'll come back tomorrow morning, and I hope your grandchildren endures long enough to see me again if the opportune moment comes near.
Then he ran off. Grandpa Jack sighed to himself, saying, That tricky cat-girl princess. I can't believe she's with us the entire time, and we don't see her. Not even the children. I just hope this opportune moment doesn't get us into any more trouble. He placed his dentures onto the floor and retires for the night. And that opportune moment may be as closer than the Pratchetts would think when Randolph arrives at the refuge later that night. Stepping out of the carriage, he knocks on the door. The wicked master immediately answers it. Yes, I'm here, he said. What do you want? Randolph thrusts a letter to the master's face. Urgent from the Baron. He insists that you should read this at once and agree to what he said. He takes the letter from Randolph. Whatever it is, I shall. Unfolding it, this is what it read. An den Meister der Zuflucht. Ich leide der Haflinge zu meinem Schloss auf dem Hügelein. Wie Sie sehen können, ist dies Teil meines Plans namens die endgültige Lösung. Durch die Transformation ihrer schrecklichen Entschuldigungen für die Zivilisation in Schweine. Wenn Sie essen meine Süßigkeiten im Speisesaal, ich bin sicher, Sie würden nie von ihnen gestört werden. Unterzeichnet Heinrich von Bratwurst, Baron von Bavaria. Since the letter is in Bavarian, the country's official language, allow me to translate it. To the master of the refuge. I will be inviting your inmates to my castle on the hill. As you can see, this is part of my plan called the final solution, by transforming your horrid excuses for civilization into pigs when they eat my sweets in the dining hall. I'm sure you'll never be bothered by them again. Signed, Heinrich von Bratwurst, Baron of Bavaria. So it's decision time, Randolph said. Do you wish to participate? That's something that horrid master in the refuge wanted to hear from the Baron. Shaking Randolph's hand, he said, You can count me in. I can't wait to have these horrible children massacred. Tomorrow night, after the children are turned into pigs and are slaughtered, I shall be inviting both you and the matron to a feast. A feast we shall not soon forget.